Okay, since we have time, if there's no other issues, I'll go over very quickly some of my concerns on the draft policy that I submitted. And I've pretty much talked about them. One of my first issues is that about a third of this paper talks about the difference between basic research, applied research, experimental development, whether you submit it as a one-part project or a two-part project. And my question is, who cares? Like, who cares? How is this in any way relevant to claiming SR&ED? I have to follow all the same 5 criteria. Benchmark standard practice, objective beyond it, technological uncertainty, systematic investigation, qualified personnel conclusion. If I do that, call it whatever, basic, I don't care, call it whatever you want. Why are we spending pages and pages if people got to read this? Who cares? I just want, everything as far as I'm concerned is experimental development. The others are all just subsets. This paper goes on for 5-6 pages about something that's completely irrelevant. It's a tick box at the start that I've never understood in 20 years that I've done it. What difference does it make? And now, they're not talking about some critical things that I think are really important, like entitlement to exploit. What does that mean? Well, that's a big issue. When I look at the new papers coming out, nobody's talking about entitlement to exploit anymore. And I always had reviewers before saying, hey, you don't have the patent on this, someone else does. Or you don't own all the rights, you can't claim SR&ED. I said, what are you talking about? Who says I need to own the rights to claim SR&ED? All I need is entitlement to exploit. All right? Entitlement to exploit, I believe I put it in the very back of your binder, or maybe not if it got printed out. The excerpt, and this will lead back to what we have, is really that they're saying this requirement is considered to be met in cases where the taxpayer has a right to use the patent that results from the SR&ED, even if this patent is charged a royalty or similar charges. Saying, where does it say I need to own the rights? Saying it's also met if I have a preferential right to use the results. I don't have to own it. This is a very important thing because I find right across Canada, all the time, reviewers tell my clients, not my clients, other clients, and then they come to me, hey, you have to own the rights. You don't own the rights, you can't claim. I'm really worried that, this is in the IT, 151, this may not be reproduced in the new papers, and if it's not reproduced, maybe that policy opinion shifting. Maybe you now need to own the rights and everything. I don't know. But I'm saying without a clear direction to the CRA that you don't, a large number of reviewers bring it upon themselves to think that they make up their own rules that you do. And again, we're just here to follow the law of our elected officials. I'll follow that, no problem, but I'm not following laws that each CRA official makes up on his or her own that they think is justifiable by themselves, because I didn't vote for them. Okay? So entitlement to exploit was something that came up, and a lot of people were saying, we're really worried, like, how is this affecting it? Has the CRA's position on this changed, or is it that they just missed putting this in the current documents that they're circulating? Because I can't seem to find it anywhere. Okay, so we talk a little bit about basic research, applied research, all these purposes. I don't really care. Like I'm saying, how does this help anyone do an SR&ED claim? How is this in any way useful? This is just confusing me. Like, I have to read 3 pages about stuff I don't understand before I can even start to talk about anything remotely relevant to claiming an SR&ED credit. Really, they talk about all the different things. Really, all they need is the purpose of the work is to achieve a technological advancement. They should delete, in my opinion, everything that they said before. Basic, who cares? If you're achieving a technological advancement, that's all that matters. And I believe they need to clarify that a technological advancement is 5 steps, not the 3, the ones that we went through. If any of those things are missing, you're probably going to have a problem. They then talk about the scientific method. They talk about this a little later. So I'm saying, oh, that's good. I really like that idea. I think that's very positive what they talked about the scientific method, but maybe they should define it. Okay? I say it's not cool to say you have to achieve technological advancement by showing content, showing technological advancement, and showing technological uncertainty. How can I show technological advancement by showing technological advancement? I don't know what technological advancement is, so how can I use it to define itself? The terminology is all wrong. Every time they use the word technological advancement here, they need to replace that with objectives beyond standard practice. Or if they really mean advancement, it's the conclusion that's made at the end of the day by analyzing uncertainties created by objectives beyond standard practice. So again, I find the terminology in here very, very, very confusing. So they talk about the scientific method. Technical content and scientific method must be demonstrated. Formulating one or more hypotheses. Hey, beautiful. I agree with all this stuff. Most clients don't really know what a hypothesis is. I'll tell you. If I say, what's your hypothesis? They'll stare at me blankly. I say, hey, what were some of the problems or variables that you're dealing with? Oh, okay. That's what you want to know. Then they'll describe that as well. I mean, hypothesis is good, in my view, if it's described. When I say scientific method, again, I said, oh, that's good. Finally, the scientific method. That's what I always equated this to. This is like the scientific method from grade 6 in school. And I downloaded it. Okay, Oxford English Dictionary's definition. But then I can go on and I can show you that there's the classical definition, which looks very much like an SR&ED project. Question or objective. Information and resources, kind of your benchmarking, your standard practice. Hypothesis. That's really defining your variables of uncertainty. Perform experiment, collect data. That's your systematic investigation. Analyze, interpret, and draw conclusions. The conclusion is the technological advancement. Without a conclusion, there is no technological advancement. There's just results. There's the potential to make a technological advancement, but you didn't make it until you make the conclusion, in my view. All right? The other published results, well, you don't have to do that. My point is, this is a great analogy. I think people follow it. But why do you say scientific method and then not define which of them? Because if we go down again, we'll see later on, there's actually numerous definitions. And there's different scientific methods now, I didn't know this till recently, for different industries. Holy smokes, which one do I use?
You can have a result, and it could be a technological advancement, even though you don't reach a conclusion. You know something, if something didn't
I disagree.
work, if something didn't work, you know for future use that this wouldn't work.
That's just a result. Why didn't it work?
You might not know why.
If you don't have to be correct. You have to hypothesize. I think on my best guess it didn't work because. Now you're a scientist. I agree with CRA that if you don't ask why, you haven't finished the project. You've got a result. That adds no new knowledge other than it can't be done. The knowledge that they're looking for, technological, is why can't it? Why do you think it can't be done? You don't even have to be correct.
They do actually state that you have to be attempting to get a technological answer, and you don't have to achieve it.
Absolutely. You have to be attempting to explain it, and you could still be wrong. You could be totally wrong, but they still want to see the attempt. Because they know eventually, if you spend enough time, you'll yourself prove yourself wrong, but that might give you other ideas. And that's what they want to see. I mean, I'm kind of summarizing things in a simplistic manner, but best analogy I can give. Okay. Again, I think a lot of this basic applied research, we don't really need to tell. This is good for an academic paper if someone wants to talk about history of the SR&ED program. None of this is any relevance to a claimant. I've never talked to any claimants ever about basic. Who cares? It's just wasting their time. It's of no relevance whatsoever in any manner. Whatever. So I'm basically saying that the technological advancement section that they call that should be completely eliminated. It should be benchmarking objectives beyond standard practice. Anything else? All right. Any other issues that people have? Oh, I'm sorry. One last major issue here. Psychological research. So the Act says we have 8 types of supporting activities, engineering design, all your operations management, computer programming, testing, data collection, all the dumb ones. And then they put psychological research at the end. So, okay, well, that's good. Anyone try to do a claim like psychological advancement for a software project or something like that? What they don't tell you is that psychological research is only eligible really in the pharmaceuticals field. When you're doing the final stage of human testing, and you're doing chemical and medical testing, that industry's lobbied the government to accept that, yeah, those are all hand in hand with the medical and chemical biological testing. That should be in. But you read through the Act again, and it says the things that are disallowed are social sciences. And then you read through, and psychology is a social science. So you're saying, well, how can the Act put it in, and then it pulls it back out again? Is it in or is it out? And the reality is, and they don't say this here, it's in for certain industries and certain situations, but if you're a software claim and you say, I want to make my program more intuitive, that's not going to fly. They're going to say, well, that's a social science. So they talk about, in some cases, psychology can be a supporting activity. I agree. Why not tell us what I just told you, the cases when and when not?
I don't know how it's applied, but in fact, experimental psychology is an eligible field, but it has to follow the scientific method.
Well, so you're beyond my scope. I've never done a claim for that, but maybe there's other situations. I mean, I kind of queried Ottawa a few times on, what do you mean here? And I didn't really get a straight answer. I got several answers that I just pieced together into one answer. I'm saying for the average claimant to do that is very hard because they don't even know who to call in the first place and how to get through. And I see claims all the time where people read this on their own in software and they say, I'm making it more intuitive, and they start this whole thing and they waste a lot of time, and I say, don't even bother. Total waste of time. All right? And again, maybe if they provided some direction in here, they define psychology, but they don't really say when it's in or when it's out. I mean, if you didn't know what I just told you, you'd be swimming like everyone else, blindly, filing bogus claims. Not really bogus. You really thought that they were in, but you just wasted all your time and money and resources, and you're not going to get that claim through. Right? Why? Because they didn't really explain that up front in a nice, succinct manner. Okay? So that was an issue I had. And then, like I say, you can look at different definitions of scientific method. So as you go on to Wikipedia, they're saying there's new definitions. They look at characteristics, hypotheses, predictions. My question then, okay, which of the definitions of scientific method am I supposed to follow? Because the law says if something's in the Act or it's said, you just read the plain English definition, like Webster's or whatever. And it's the plain English meaning, unless there's a definition to clarify to the contrary. So I'm saying, if you're going to throw words out like scientific method, I commend the CRA on that. I think that's a very positive step. But they should take it a step further and say, whoa, that's still ambiguous. What interpretation of scientific method of the various definitions that are similar but different are we following? Okay, and like I say, psychological research, they're saying it may be eligible in some cases and not in others, but in reality, that's still misleading. I know which cases. If I'm doing pharmaceuticals, it's in. If it's anything else, it's pretty much out, other than situations, hey, I'd be happy to learn about more, but that's more or less the understanding that I've had for it. If that's the case, they should state that. If it's different and I'm misinterpreting it, I would still like to know anyways. If someone would tell me, give me an example. When's psychological research in? When's it out? Because this is saying it's in sometimes and it's out sometimes. It's just not telling us when. All right. I think that they don't define scientific method, but they define systematic investigation or search. I'm reading it, and I'm saying, whoa, that sounds a lot like scientific method. Maybe they can combine those two definitions and say systematic investigation or search, in our view, is applying the scientific method in the following, this version of the scientific method. Or these versions, I don't really care. Give me some direction and we'll follow it. Technology base or level. This should be moved, in my view, right up to this. The part that says advancement right now should say, what's your standard technology base and how do you have objective that goes beyond that? Because that's ultimately what they want you to tell them. What did I do to define the technology and where did it go from there? All right? And that's about all I had to say on that. All right, guys. Any other questions, issues, or concerns before we adjourn? Why don't, at this point, if we have any other questions for the CRA, we'll kill the cameras at this point. We can throw questions out to Dominic, and then we can just do a quick wrap-up.